All right, everyone, welcome to this month's Choice Agent Spotlight interview. My name is Kate Stedman. I'm the Director of Agent Development here at Choice, and today we'll be having a conversation with our agent, Taylor Oldham. At Choice, we believe in connecting you with the people, systems, and resources that pack a punch in your business and recognize that so often the most valuable resources are right in front of us. And the best way we can learn is from one another, which is why we started these interviews, and that's what we're going to do today. Taylor is an agent known for her social media presence. She has mastered the art of building her brand and creating content that sparks conversation and converts. She's the queen of systems and leveraging time. She has scaled her business impressively, going from buyer's agent to team lead in just a matter of years. She's been a part of our Choice community since 2019 and started her business here. She's consistently ranked on our leaderboards, both individually and as a team. She was the agent on the rise in the Triangle Real Producers magazine just this year, and she's someone that I can't wait to have a conversation with today. Taylor, welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Yay! I'm like blushing.
I know, like I always take pride in those. I love being y'all's cheerleaders. So anytime I get a chance to sing your praises, I will absolutely do that. Cool. Well, you guys know how I like to start these. We all came from somewhere. We all started our business at some point, even if it feels like it's been forever. So I always like to start everyone off with the same few questions, which is, where are you from? What did you do before you got into real estate, and what got you into the business?
Well, I am born and raised in North Carolina. I'm from what I call the mountains, what my husband says is the foothills. I'm from Morganton, North Carolina, really small town, which is actually taken off once I left for college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. From there, I got a sport marketing degree. So I started my time with the Carolina Hurricanes. So go Canes. I was with them for 5 years during the longest playoff drought that Raleigh has seen. So we never made it to the playoffs when I was there. You're welcome for leaving. I was the bad luck. Um, I left in February of 2019 after having various roles. I probably had the most roles in my tenure there. I was community relations intern. I did ticket sales, which was a whole lot of cold calling. I then they created a position on the arena side, so I did client services and employee relations. It was a made up position, but it was great fun for the year that I was doing that. And then I ended up in corporate sponsorship services. So every single TV commercial, radio ad, anything branded in the arena and outside of the arena that dealt with the Canes, I was a part of it. And it sucked all of the life out of me. So I ended up leaving there and I transitioned to Wasserman, and that's where I met Kate. So,
Not me, her teammate. Yes.
oh yes, sorry, that Kate, she's down there for me, but we'll see. So that's where I met Kate. I was in their hospitality department. So basically, I babysat very wealthy individuals as they went to huge sporting events like the Final Four. It's true. They went to the Final Four, the Kentucky Derby. They went to Hawaii. Like we just basically babysat them and made sure that every part of their trip was detailed, planned out, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's sort of my backstory. And then I think your last question was like, what made the decision to get into the business? With Wasserman, I was traveling probably half the month. And I was in an airplane and you'd work until like 3 o'clock in the morning, getting these C-suite executives home from like the bar or the club or wherever they were. And then there were people flying out the next morning at like 4 a.m. So not sleeping. I realized then how severe my anxiety was. My dog got anxiety because I was never home. And so my now husband, we sat down and basically made what do you want to do with your life list? And it was like, okay, in an ideal situation, I would love to own an Etsy shop and craft all day. Clearly, that's probably not the most financially stable job to start out with. And Ashley Denny actually helped us buy our home back in 2017. So Taylor, my husband's name is also Taylor. He said, "Why don't you sit down with Ashley? I think you'd be really good at real estate." And I was like, "You're right. I love HGTV. This will be great." Sat down with her, realized it is not like HGTV at all. But she was willing to give me a shot. So she introduced me to Brian. He was willing to give me a shot. So I took my test and got licensed, and ended up here back in 2019.
Amazing. Yeah, claps like Brenda's doing. It's so funny. Anytime we have these conversations, I would swear at least half of the people we speak with were in some career that just completely burned them out. They're like, well, I'm going to get into real estate. And so I just like to point that out because obviously real estate has its own very long days and there can be long stretches of very long days. And so that is not to say that you are not going to be burnt out, right? Like it all always comes in waves. But I think it's important to remember where we came from and why we did this, because so often, even if we compare them, like we're still leaps and bounds from where we wanted to be then, like be
Yes.
so proud of ourselves. And I also think that, you know, our loved ones look at us and they can be quite the catalyst and say, like, I see the hustle, I see the care that you have for people. And so anyway, I like to note both of those things because it was part of your journey. And your statement about the like, what do I want to do with my life list? That was something I wanted to touch on real quick because I think it's something that we'll do is a moment in time and then we kind of forget about it, or we get to a certain point and we think, well, like this is what I've been doing, so this is what I need to do. And just as a friendly reminder, if anyone needs some permission here, like you are always in a position to make a what do you want to do with your life list, like any day can be the day that you change your life. So anyway, let's carry on. So you decided to work with Ashley, no one better. What a great way to get into the business, and one of our very first choice agents, mind you. So you mentioned this is how you decided where you wanted to start. What did those beginning days look like, and how did you fill your time?
So at the beginning, I thought that I could work at Wasserman and be Ashley's transaction coordinator and start a real estate business. Full transparency, and I mean, Ashley knows it, so I'm not saying anything bad. I got my license in August and I tried that until about October. Ashley looked at me in September and said, "Quit your job or I'm going to find a new transaction coordinator. Like, I need someone that can put in more time." And honestly, that was like the kick in the butt that I needed because I wasn't ready to quit having like money come in consistently and like make the leap. So I was sort of doing both and failing at both my what was my full-time job and helping her. So I ended up quitting Wasserman in October. And sort of those early days where she had come from Keller Williams, she still had like her training binder. We would sit down, I would go through the training binder, and it was like, okay, this is what you need to do to kickstart your business. You need to be calling people, emailing people, like letting everyone know that you're in real estate. So it was a lot of like shadowing her, going to showings, learning what I'm looking for, a lot of like sitting in the car with her and trying to learn that way, and just trying to figure out like, what am I supposed to be doing? And honestly, probably a lot of sitting on the couch and watching Netflix because I finally felt like I had like some downtime, even though that quickly changed.
Will you talk a little bit more about sitting in the car and listening?
Yeah. So I started out as like Ashley's transaction coordinator. So she did a lot of like training me on what like the steps were at the beginning. But I knew like just doing that wasn't going to teach me like the business. Sitting behind a computer wouldn't show me like what to look for in a house or things like that. So I guess because I had access to her calendar and I could see when she was going to show a home or when she was doing an inspection and stuff like that, I literally would text her and be like, "Hey, can I come ride with you? I'll come park at your house. What time are you leaving? I just want to like be in the car." And so she's answering and fielding calls from clients and agents, and she would put it on speakerphone, and I would just sit, be quiet, and listen and like take in what she's saying to people, how she's handling people. And it was just like it gave me insight into situations that I would deal with later, and I knew how to handle them based on like what I was learning from her. So it was like a great observation experience. And like, two, it was almost like scripting without like her sitting and giving me a printout. I was listening to how she's handling things and memorizing what she's saying so that whenever it came time to me, like I knew what I needed to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that obviously was a leading question that I wanted you to hit on because you and I had talked about it previously. But I was always that same way. Brian, if there was ever a time when I was in production and I needed something, I would, or I didn't know how to handle something, I would call him. And, or I would be at the office and be like, okay, say it again. I'm going to audio record you. And I would just sit in the car and listen to that like 5 different times and be like, okay, I've got it. Right. And I'm such an advocate for scripting. And I know as soon as I say that, people kind of recoil, and I probably need to pick a
Yeah.
different word for it, right? Because I think our guttural response to the term scripting is like a used car salesperson, or that our whole goal in whatever practiced conversation we're having is to sell someone something. And the connotation is that it's something they don't want, right? When in reality, it's just an internalization of the conversations we're having most regularly and finding the most effective way to convey that information in a way that's authentic to us. And
Mhm.
before we can find whatever is authentic to us, we need to deeply understand like the root of the conversation and what we're trying to convey. And so those conversations about getting due diligence in a certain amount of time, or what needs to be done to your home before we list it, or how I arrived at these numbers when we're looking at your CMA, or due diligence negotiations, it doesn't matter, right? Like these are the same conversations we have for every contract. And so the more you can internalize it, the better. And also, if you're relatively new as an agent, don't think that the only thing you need to be shadowing is showings, right? Like there's so much more to this. And so anyway, thank you for listening to my tangent for a moment because it's something that I'm quite passionate about. But you wouldn't get on stage and do some speech. You might get paid a few $1,000s if you're lucky, right? You would absolutely practice that endlessly. And yet that's the amount of money we make in one transaction, and we're so hesitant to practice. So find a friend, or at least like find someone that you trust as an agent who's killing it and be like, hey, can you record a few of those? Let me get on Zoom while you have it, whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. Don't be afraid to do those things.
And I was nervous about like practicing with someone. So I would like take what she's saying and then I would come practice by myself. But that at least like I knew what was coming, or I could go back and ask her or go sit in on another buyer consultation. So
Yeah, you're just not practicing in the moment. Yeah. Even in the car. The car is a great place to practice. Were there any of those conversations that were like one of the biggest takeaways, or was it just the culmination of all of it?
I think the culmination of all of it, honestly, like I would sit it. I guess the biggest thing that like helped me was like sitting in on buyer consultations. I wouldn't say anything. I would be there to like take notes and write down. So I was like helping her write down like what they're looking for or things like that. But just like listening to the flow of that. I mean, I felt so confident when I walked out of my first consultation. I was like, I nailed it. I said everything that Ashley has ever said. I picked up on like her puns. My favorite one is sticks and or houses are sticks and bricks. Everything can be fixed. I still use it to this day, but like that was something that she said that like hit home. And it was just like going to those constantly, I feel like set me up to feel more confident. And I think the confidence like showed to the clients too.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. So, what advice would you give to an agent just starting out, aside from what we just talked about?
Um, I guess like my biggest thing is like listen to agents that have been doing this. I mean, honestly, I still call Brian and UK. I call Heather. I call like everyone that's either like more experienced than me or maybe has been through different situations. Like I'm constantly calling on other people and asking for advice and like listening to what they say because I mean, I can learn from my own mistakes, but why not learn from their mistakes? And then I mean, it just helps you like to not make them in the future.
Totally. They'll still come up, but it's nice to avoid them
Yes.
as we can. Anything else that you want to touch on involving like your role? Obviously, you shadowed and you did transaction coordination. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on in terms of what that role involved?
So I think I built a lot of like my business today off of starting as her transaction coordinator. Like a bunch of the systems I have in place today, and I know we'll hit on that later, like started from like the sheet of paper that she handed me. Like it evolved from there, and it's still constantly evolving. Same way for like email templates. I mean, there's no point in recreating the wheel. Talk to someone, buy a template from someone, like start somewhere, but then make it your own. So that's been huge for my business. I didn't have to start from square one. I
Totally.
just
And
took her stuff.
yeah. And to your point, we at Choice have a number of email templates on our intranet. There are templates that you can purchase. We'll talk about a lot of those just a little bit when we talk about systems, but exactly to your point, you read my mind. Don't recreate the wheel. So obviously you were working kind of as a buyer's agent, so you had a good bit of business from that with Ashley. How did you start to build your own business and get your own clients? Who were those first few people and how did you get them?
Well, um, just full transparency, I somehow got connected with this really sketchy lender program in Las Vegas. They were sending me potential buyer clients. They were not qualified people, like it was a complete mess, but did probably 15 buyer consultations with these random people. Ended up parting ways with the lender company, thank goodness. It was just like not a good fit. But the way I sort of snowballed and started all of that was honestly, Ashley went on maternity leave probably about 6 or 8 months after I started. And so I started really like showing her buyers homes. At that point, like she had built enough trust in me to sort of let me take the lead on most of those. So when I was showing on Instagram, oh, we just toured this house. Oh, we did this. It was never like I did this because it was still like her clients. I wanted to give her like credit. But when people started seeing that I was busy, they started trusting me. And I became more of like, I probably was not an expert at all at the time. And sorry to Ashley for calling when she was on maternity leave. And probably sorry, Brian, for calling you all the time too. But it was more of like a fake it till you make it. But I was going to find the right answers, and showing people that I was busy and I was actually doing stuff helped me like transition that into my own clients.
Totally. And I mean, so momentum I think is huge, which obviously sometimes we lose it, but I think it's so hard. It can be so hard to get back. And once you have it, we can be incredibly busy and that's often when we're the most tired. And so it's easy for us to complain about it. But I think it's so important that we recognize it because truly it helps us keep that momentum.
Mhm.
But to your point, I say that all the time. Like, unfortunately, obviously, we don't want to always feel like we need to hustle more and be doing more. But unfortunately, to the vast public, busy equals successful, right? And so, even if it is literally just you popping up and touring vacant homes, or you aren't even with a client, you're looking at new construction, the more you can get out in the field, then the more confident you are in the way that you're going to be showing things and delivering information. But also, it gives you something to post about. So,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
It taught me how
Okay.
to open one of those locker combinations. I went and showed houses by myself and called Ashley and said, I don't know what I'm doing. How do you open this? But I learned before I took a client into one of those houses.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Thankfully, same. I think most of us haven't opened one of those since like middle school locker days. So practice, not in front of someone, because it can take a few. So you got some clients of your own, you started to snowball. But what point did you decide that you needed to go independent? What was that threshold for you?
Well, I'm pretty sure I called Brian crying and was like, I need boundaries. I'm working 24/7. This is not what I wanted. Um, and Ashley and I had like a lot of conversations. I think at one point in time, I was actively working about 15 deals between myself and her and handling my transaction portion, her transact, like it was just a whole lot. And so Brian and I discussed my boundaries and what we were gonna sort of set in place. And then Ashley and I sort of figured out an escape plan. Well, not escape, I love her, but an escape for myself. And thankfully, at about that time, Kate, who's now right below me, she had bought a house with me and was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about leaving Wasserman. What's next?" And I was like, "Perfect. You go work with Ashley. I'm gonna leave. I'll teach you what to do." So it ended up like being the right time, right place. But honestly, it was too much. Stuff was slipping from what I needed to be doing. I was missing stuff with Ashley. And like honestly, we should have probably made the transition earlier before it got that way. But hindsight's 2020.
I'm glad you brought that up because it was something that I meant to mention earlier when you were talking about leaving Wasserman after doing both jobs for a while. Of like you decided to take the leap, but it kind of was forced upon you. And I think so often life does that to us, even though it is so uncomfortable in the moment. But I think it's so important to remember that transitions are always like when life is most uncomfortable. And of course it feels that way, but so often those catalysts, those things that like we wouldn't have done and feel forced upon us, looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed. And I probably wouldn't have done it for myself. So it's always nice to like be thankful for those catalysts, even though they can be quite a pain. So as you got started, you really started diving into and working your own business. You started really working on building it based on referrals, which I think we can all appreciate and all agree that that is our end goal. Will you talk, I love talking about lead generation. Will you talk about your perspective on lead generation, especially with your past careers and what that meant in terms of how you set a foundation for how you wanted to do things?
Yes. So getting into real estate, everyone's like, you've got to make calls, you've got to call people, you've got to lead generate all this stuff. I'm going to be real honest. I was making 80 to 100 calls every single day at the Hurricanes in the middle of a playoff drought when no one wanted to pay money to go to an empty stadium to watch hockey. So I was getting cussed out, like yelled at, how'd you get my number? Like, cold calling, not for me. I tried it, was not successful. That's why they made a position for me at the Canes because I was not going to go into ticket sales, and that was the only openings. Um, so when I got into real estate, and everyone was like, "Yes, you're going to need to start calling people. You can call expired. You can call for sale by owners." I was like, "Nope, not happening. Like, not going to go back down that track." So I was like, "Okay, what can I do to make an impact and be successful in this?" And so I kind of turned to my sphere, turning to Instagram, and was like, how can I build on this instead of like having cold leads? I'd much rather have warm leads that already like me and trust me. So that's sort of what kicked me into that realm.
Yeah, and I think in this industry, with every industry, but especially ours, and depending on who you follow, especially with some mega agents, everyone is so fast to tell you exactly what you need to do in order to be successful. And this is the template, and it makes it sound like that is the only way. And in
Mhm.
reality, especially in this day and age where we have access to more technology than ever, and we have a ton of access to social media, which is a free opportunity for all of us, right? Like there are a million ways you can run your business. And so if something isn't working for you, then try something else. Um, don't beat yourself up. I do believe like try everything, right? See, make sure it's not a fit before you write it off. But if something's not working, if open houses aren't your vibe, then don't be spending every weekend trying to force it, right? I think forcing energy is not what attracts. So absolutely chase what excites you. So on that note, I would love to talk about social media because I think everyone here, if you've been here for any length of time, then you know that that is absolutely one of Taylor's strengths. If not, then go follow her. We'll put it in the email afterwards. But I'd love to start from the beginning. Can you share a little bit about social media? And I think specifically, I'd really like to start with content pillars and branding because that's something that you were really intentional about and it shows.
Yeah. So before we get into like that part, how um basically I stumbled upon this account that sort of taught you how to do social media, but I also knew marketing from my time in like corporate partnerships and like my time at Wasserman. And half of my degree was in sports marketing. Actually, I guess all of it, because that's sort of what it was called. But basically, I just knew that I needed to do something different. I stumbled upon this account. It was Chelsea Peterson. She's with the Modern Agent Social Club, and she had like a paid thing. I wasn't making any money, so I wasn't going to spend money, and Instagram was free. So I did something that kind of I regret now. Not really. I asked her if she does any discounts on her membership because I wanted to be a part of it, but I didn't have the money to pay for it. She did not. She did not reply. We're friends now. But she did end up offering this like free course, which was like an overview of like steps to set up like your Instagram account and how to like approach it. So I did that, and that sort of like kick-started it. I've now been a member of her community for like 5 years. Highly recommend it. We'll hit on some more different pieces with it, but it helped me figure out like what my brand menu was or what my brand identity was going to be and how I could infuse that into my content pillars to ultimately like make me more relatable. So the way I look at like your brand menu is like, who are you and what's going to make you relatable? Pick like a few things. You don't have to share your entire life. Um, like the things that make me me that I can infuse into my real estate business are I love La Marca Prosecco. Um, I can't survive without coffee. I shop at Target probably multiple times a day. And I am a sucker for reality TV, mainly like The Bachelor in particular. Um, so basically, it was like, how can I infuse that part of my personality, which also makes me relatable, into like my branding and my business? And then I set up like my content pillars. So it's like, okay, what can streamline my content and like make it easier for me to come up with ideas and things like that? If you do join like a membership, like a Modern Agent Social Club, I mean, they basically give you the content. The key is to like change it and make it your own. Um, but basically, I've set up, and it doesn't happen all the time, forgive yourself, but Mondays, I'm going to post like home buyer and seller tips. Okay, I've got a category. How can I infuse my brand menu into these buyer and seller tips? Wednesday, it's going to be miscellaneous content. Is it about me? Did I go to a wedding the other day? Like different things that people can find relatable that sort of tell who I am. And then Friday, we're going to get like local specific. I am trying to be like the go-to person in my neighborhood in Nightdale Station. So I'm going to highlight everything around me. I want to be like Heather. I want to be that go-to person that everyone in my neighborhood turns to. So I'm trying to like infuse stuff that I've learned from her into like my Friday content. How can I be that local expert? It doesn't always happen, but like that's sort of my game plan moving forward with it. I think that answers your question.
It does. It does. I think it's just taking your passions and the things that excite you and finding ways to weave it in. And it doesn't mean that every single post that you do is going to hit on any of those things, right? But it can be something that you throw into your story occasionally. The whole goal with the brand menu or brand identity, right? Like content pillars are kind of what your main content focuses on. But your brand identity is how people relate to you. And at the end of the day, our whole goal is to start conversations, ideally about real estate, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, just to start conversations because we want to have a way to keep in community with people, and sending them postcards or newsletters is great. We'll touch on that. But at the end of the day, like that they know that that's real estate focused. They know what we do. They are human and they want us to be human. And so this is our way to kind of bridge that and make sure that we've got those conversations going. Any pieces of advice that you want to touch on when it comes to social media?
Yeah, I think number one, like consistency is key. Like staying consistent. If you can commit to posting one time a week, do it. Post one time a week consistently instead of 5 times a week, one time a week, 0 times a week. Like try and figure out what's going to work for you and be consistent on it. And I think like don't overthink it. Don't try and figure out, well, this is my business page. Like, I'm not going to share personal. Like, people want to work with people that they know, love, and trust. If you can build that trust behind like a social media platform, by all means do it. Um, Another thing, like, don't overthink what your relatable components are going to be. Like, honestly, I got a buyer because I posted that I watched The Bachelor. she messaged me and then I ended up helping her buy a house. Like I know that that person like came specifically like from there because she found something that was relatable with it. So just like don't overthink it. It's not that serious of a thing. You sound the way you sound, you look the way you look, like just do it and stop overthinking it. Because just showing up is going to be so much better than trying to be perfect.
And I think the same goes with physically creating the content. I think it's so easy to look at some of the mega agents or even agents that are just really strong on social media and they have very like professionally published videos or professionally taken videos, and those are great, but they don't have to be, right? Like we all have a content creation device in our hand that is how we run our entire business. When you're out in the field, just take a quick video. And sure, you can absolutely hire a professional for certain situations like your listings, but don't overthink it. I actually like the opposite. I really like just doing kind of shorter videos that you can tell I made because then you know that like I'm a real human and I'm the one doing this and I'm not just like trying to over publicize it. I don't know. So, but find whatever works for you, right? Just get it done to your
Yep.
point. So, talking about social media, can you talk a little bit about your process for listings and other content? What do you hire out? What do you use templates for? I think when all of us think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's just one more thing I need to fit in the day. So, how do you tangibly make it happen?
So honestly, sitting in on your hiring out presentation, like triggered something in my head. I'd been trying to figure out like I've got all of these ideas in my head, but like how do I actually go from point A to point B? One, follow the creativity. When it hits, go with it. When it's not flowing, like just sit back and like don't try and force it. Um, but figuring out like honestly how you set up your Monday awakens something in me. So now I've got like my three content pillars that I talked about, like my Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's my consistency piece, or I attempt to, failing at it, but trying, which is okay. So then I sat down and was like, okay, with my home buyer and seller tips, like what can I do? So then, like, I use Monday, we can talk about that all day, but then I can sit and be like, okay, I need a caption for this. The reel is created. This is going to be a carousel post. So I can visually see where I am in that process and I can leave notes to myself. Here's my idea for the video. Here's my idea for the audio. Here's part of my caption. I'm going to go in ChatGPT and see if I can tweak it or come up with something. So as far as like hiring out goes, I absolutely bring in, her name's Sophie. She is the absolute best. She does my professional photos and videos for listings. 100% hire that out. I am not talented with a camera. I swear my iPhone, though it's like a new one, just takes crappy photos. It's okay. But I hire that out. And then either one or two times a year, I do a big brand photo shoot. So Kristen and Serena that just did the group choice headshot day. I hire them once or twice a year. And basically we rent out a model home somewhere, or I talk to agents that work with the builders or whoever it might be. And I literally book it for the day. We go in, we change clothes, we have like a game plan of what we're going to do, but that's going to be like the content overview. So I basically like have a game plan there. Otherwise, I don't really hire out anything. I'm in like the Modern Agent Social Club, so that can help with ideas. Um, it's gone in a slightly different direction, so it's not like what I use constantly now. But I use a lot of Chat GPT to like if I have an idea, like help me take this from point A to point B, and then I'll tweak point Z instead of me sitting there and taking 2 hours to come up with it.
Totally. So on that note, on the note of social media, I would love for us to talk about freebies. And it was interesting. First of all, I'll just throw this out there. I will make sure to include a copy of the hiring out for social media class when I send out the recording of this. I made a little note for myself, but I want to talk about the power of freebies because you mentioned this with Modern Agent Social Club is this was one of the ways that you kind of got your foot in the door. And I personally have done this a number of times that I signed up for a big coaching program earlier this year. And the whole reason I did it was because I was getting so much value out of the free content I was consuming by that individual that I already resonated with, right? And so I think it can be such a catalyst for being like, well, if this is what I'm getting out of what's free, I can't imagine what I'll get in paid community with this person. And so I think the same thing goes with us and with our social media. And so we hear the term lead magnet thrown around a lot, but I would love for us to spend some time because if you're not really in the social media realm or if you're working on upping it, this is something that you may or may not have heard of. So will you just explain for a moment what lead magnets are and
Yeah.
then how you started using them in your business, what you're using now, and how they've impacted everything?
So honestly, like when I started Modern Agent Social Club, she has a million different things and it was very overwhelming. So I was like, okay, pick and choose what makes sense to like me and my business and move forward like with that. She probably has like 20 free guides. Once again, not recreating the wheel, using what somebody else is already done. And sorry if you can hear the trash man outside my window. Um, but basically what it is you make this free guide. It's almost like a teaser of information that you're already sharing. So if you go on like our website, Kate and I have probably like 10 of them on there. I started with one and then like once I got confident in that, then you like set up another. But basically what I use them as is maybe I have one free guide. Well, I'm going to make 4 to 6 Instagram posts and it's going to be like teasing out this guide. Basically, the goal of Instagram is to get people off of Instagram. Because what if Instagram crashes? What if your account gets hacked? What if, I don't know, the internet, well, maybe not, we're not going to say the internet burns down. But like, basically, I want people on my like email marketing list because then I can stay on top of them. Social media algorithms honestly are changing like every single day. So even if you're posting great content, chances are most of your followers or viewers aren't actually seeing it. So what are ways that like I can stay in front of them consistently? And so I use the free guides to then pull people off of Instagram and like get in my email database. Um, don't let them overwhelm you. And honestly, I think I've got 3 for home buyers. They're basically the exact same content, but they're just geared to like a different person. So there's like a say yes to the address. Okay, well, that's like say yes to the dress. So chances are people that are like in the, oh, I'm getting married, I need to start thinking about like buying a home. That's like a big life thing. Well, then they're going to probably go more towards that. And then there's like a home buyer boot camp. They're literally like the exact same freebie, but they've got different names. So it's like I'm advertising them and I try and like pick one a month that I'm going to advertise or like try and promote. And then I get people and then they go through like my Flow Desk chain. I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but they get an email from me every month, basically for 8 months, if they've entered my buyer or seller templates. And it's an email that looks curated to them. It's definitely not. It's definitely a template that I've sat down and created, but it's taking like one touch point. I'm not even thinking about it. It's just happening in the background.
Perfect, because that was my next question is how do you nurture those people once you've got them in your database? So what has that conversion been? How do you think lead magnets have impacted your business? Or is it noticeable or is it something that you kind of step back and you're like, oh yeah,
Um, I'm, I mean, in all honesty, closing one client off of it pays me for my time that it took to set it up. And now it's like a lot easier to set it up once I took the time to like create the emails and create like the guide sort of thing or replicating it. Um, so I think it's worth it. I mean, I have clients now that I've helped buy in the past, and then they'll request like a seller packet. Well, that's a trigger in my head. Hey, saw you requested this free guide. They're already in the emails, but now it's a text conversation or now that's a phone call. Hey, do you guys have any questions? Like, where do you want to go from here? Well, now I have a listing appointment that I didn't really have to do anything. The free guides have been sitting on my website. and they like know that I have them because I advertise and like talk about it on social media and different things. So it's definitely helped in that sense. Granted, then I get agents in different markets that request them. So like there's also like that's not ever gonna turn anything over for me.
Totally. But to your point, it's a nice little hand raise. So
Mhm.
obviously we could talk about social media forever, and we have a number of opportunities to do just that. We're going to do a content creation class with Eric Rainey on October 22nd. You guys will get an email for that when October hits. Taylor is going to be doing another one in December 12th. So you guys will stay in the loop. We have plenty of opportunities to continue this conversation and get even more in depth. We'll be sure to put those on the calendar, but changing gears slightly, not too much though. I want to talk about other marketing strategies and ways that you nurture your database. Will you speak to any of the other things that you do, whether it's mailers or newsletters or events or pop buys, any of that stuff?
Yeah. So similarly, I use Flowdesk for like newsletter marketing. So our entire database, I think it's like 600 people now, get our monthly newsletter. So that's like one way to stay on top of them. That's where we're sharing if we have any new listings, any great reviews, um, any content that we're sharing on Instagram that's like very notable, that's good to like get in front of people. I think that's a good way to like repurpose it. Um, Hoping to do better on like creating blogs, but in all honesty, those are at the bottom of my to-do list. And I think it's just like not getting overwhelmed with trying to do 20 million things and trying to figure out like how can I repurpose what I've already done into this content. So something that I'm working on. As far as we do a client event, we actually team up with Ashley, given that Kate and I both have worked with Ashley's clients in the past. It just sort of made sense. Honestly, it takes a lot of the financial burden off of the three of us, splitting it up that way. But we do one big client event each year. Probably should start planning that. We usually do it, I guess, we're probably going to do similar to what we did last year. So it'll be like a December, end of November event, renting out a movie theater, but love that like touch point of being in front of your clients. Honestly, hosting an event, you can mail out invitations. You can follow up with like an email. We have like a VIP Facebook group that I also stole from Heather. Like I said, don't recreate the wheel. But we post it there, inviting people. So it's like hitting different touch points. You can send a thank you. We did a photo booth at the one last year. So in our thank you is like, here's all the photos, even though they got like a printout. More from Heather. I'm trying to farm my neighborhood. So I've been doing like more mailers here and like trying to be like more involved in my community. So I compiled like local businesses that are actually owned by residents. I put them on magnets. I sent them out to everyone in our neighborhood. Um, Kate and I did little terracotta pots with seeds in them to all of our neighbors. Last year, Kate did feel free to chime in, a wrapping paper, and she went and talked to people in her neighborhood, and it had a little market dwellings tag with like her business card in it. Like that was like a huge hit. It just helps like start conversations with people. So trying to do like that sort of thing. I've done pop buys in the past. Honestly, I need to come up with like a consistent thing. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, but done's better than perfect. So that's sort of how it is right now. Maybe we'll come up with a better strategy next year. But just trying to like do things.
Totally. I mean, I think we can all agree it's ideal if you can plan it at the beginning of the year and set your budget and, go ahead and slowly gather the materials. But at the same time, we all have our own ways of doing things. I'm like you, Taylor, like, well, oh my gosh, it's here. Let me do it right now. You know what?
Yeah.
It gets done, doesn't it? Right. So totally. It's all about the touch points, even if they don't come. Ideally they do, but even if not, we've said this a number of times, it's always about the touch points themselves. If they don't come, it's a reason to reach out and say, like, hey, we missed you. Leading up to it, it's a great touch point. When the photos are done, you've got an opportunity to reach out and let them know that they're ready. When the holidays roll around, you've got something that you can print off and put into ornaments, right? Like there are a million things that you can do with all of that. And I think you kind of hit on it I might have missed it a little bit, but what she was saying about Kate is she did pop buys of wrapping paper for her neighborhood, which I thought was such a fun idea. It's so unique. And obviously you can buy them in bulk from Amazon, and it's not, whatever it is, it's making sure that it's not too grabby, make sure it's something that's authentic to you and that you personally would see the value in if you were to receive it yourself. So um, changing gears just a touch, but also circling back a little bit to branding. One of the things that you're really strong in is weaving your brand not only into social media, but into every aspect of your process. I know you've got like keychains that you have for when you deliver keys, some folders, you do your champagne pictures. Will you just kind of speak about that? Is there anything that I missed or anything that you want to add about infusing your brand into your client experience?
Um, so I think you hit on it. We definitely have like our folders that have like our buyer and seller packets and stuff in it. So everybody that works with us on both the buyer sell side gets our folder that's filled with like information, the contract documents that you have to go through. So they're getting that. They get our like branded keychain at closing day. My favorite thing are these dang pins. And if you've been at the Choice office, you have my old ones probably. Um, Honestly, I feel like Ashley had them from when she was at Keller Williams, and one of my friends worked in like a branding company, and I sent her Ashley's pin, and I was like, I want this. How do I do it? So basically, it's like my business card on a pin. So love giving those out. We try and like infuse our like brand into everything. So because Kate and I both love coffee, um, we're bringing clients coffee to like closing for sure, sometimes different showings. It's a question on like our buyer intake form, like what's your coffee order? We still double check with them before we bring it because I mean mine changes up seasonally. So we're still going to double check what do they want. And then obviously champagne and wine is like a huge part of our brand, but it's also like the drink of celebration, at least in my opinion. So we have our clients take pictures spraying champagne. I mean, when are you going to do that? So we spray champagne on closing day. We take lots of pictures, videos. One, it's for content for us, but we also turned it into a client gift. So we do it on Black Friday. We love to save some money. So we use Shutterfly and take their champagne photo and we turn it into a Christmas ornament that says like my first holiday or whatever in my home or whatever in 2024. We are in 2024. So we make those ornaments. And in the past, we've gone and physically delivered them to every single person that closed that year. This year, we might go the mail route because it took us like 3 days a piece to get all those out last year. But we do that, and it's like a cute touch point. It's something like tangible that they have of that photo. And then it's something that they're remembering us every year. We do put our logo on the back of it, just sort of like as a reminder, but it's not like the focal point. Nothing like our brand is on the front. It's like their photo. So I think that's been like a huge hit for like infusing our brand into our client experience. Oh, and they get a Target gift basket at closing curated to them. So full circle.
Love it. All the touch points. I know we're cutting it close on time, so I'm going to speed through a few things. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but I did want to talk about your open house process. Um, Obviously, we all have our own methods, but there's one thing that you do that's really specific to making sure that you have an opportunity to convert and get them a little more engaged and a little bit excited. Will you talk about that for a minute?
Yes. So instead of like a typical sign-in sheet, I have a frame with a QR code. The QR code set up to my flow desk. I don't want to have to input people after the fact. So if they can put their information in, that's great. But on the QR code, it tells them that there's a chance that you're going to win a prize. I don't tell them what the prize is. I don't tell the value of the prize. One of my questions on my questionnaire is, are you working with an agent? If they answer no, that they're not working with an agent, they win a prize. So sorry, it is rigged, completely rigged. But I've got their email address. So then what I do next, I figure out it might be one person that's won, it might be 5 people that have won. They don't know what they're entering to win. So maybe, I mean, one time I think we gave away $5 Chick-fil-A gift cards. It's still something, but it doesn't like break the bank or break your budget. But I send an email and it's like, hey, congratulations, you won. We need your address so that we can send you your gift card. So then they get a handwritten card with their gift card. But now I have their email address and their address, sometimes their cell phone numbers and their email signature or something like that. So maybe we've gotten that information, but now like I have more information on them and they've gotten like a curated gift, I guess, from us. So it's just like an added touch point. I do send an email saying, sorry, you did not win to the people that do have an agent, and then I remove them from my database. But that's sort of how that works. But that way it's hopefully converting the right people.
Totally. I loved that idea when we were talking about it in our pre-interview chat. And I love your thought on pulling people's phone numbers from their email signature. Because so true. I think almost all of us have it. Well, all of us do, but so often other people do as well. That's a great way. If you can get a response from them, dig in, see what else you can find.
And they're
All
going
right.
to
So
respond. They want a free gift.
yeah, whatever it may be, send it my way.
Mhm.
All right, so one thing I do want to spend a little bit of time on is talking about systems. You are a queen of systems. I personally have consulted with you a number of times by Zoom, being like, share your screen, let me see how you do this, and then vice versa. Will you talk about, and I say all of this not to say, let's dive in, let's share your screen, all of you copy and paste it, right? My point is actually to give you some inspiration on some different ways that systems can work for you. So Taylor, will you just talk about the way your systems have evolved from the time that you started to where you are now? What do you use? What did you use before? And what advice do you have?
So when I originally started with Ashley, she gave me a printout of like a checklist. And that was the things to do when you get a buyer under contract or you're about to get a listing live. So I liked that, but it didn't help with like our communication because the checklist was printed out on my desk. She couldn't know like where I was in the status. So I created a Google Excel spreadsheet to where she could see like where I was. So I took her checklist, expanded upon it, and like made it into an Excel spreadsheet. Well, then when I was managing my and her business, it became very complicated. I was managing 2 spreadsheets because I wanted like our business stuff to stay separate. Then I listened to the Hustle Humbly podcast with Katie Caldwell, and she had like a systems course that you could pay for and get her email templates. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pay for this and figure out what I can be doing differently. So she used Trello. So I took that Excel spreadsheet and converted it into Trello because then Ashley and I could have different boards that we could manage, and I can sort of create that. And it helped me also like evolve her email templates with the Hustle Humbly templates and sort of tweak them with what we were working on. And then Ellie and I got coffee before she officially joined Choice, and she's like, have you heard about Monday? I was like, nope, show me everything you know. So Ellie showed me her Monday board, and once again, not recreating the wheel, I took photos of Ellie's board and was like, okay, how can I make this my own? So I took everything that I'd done for Ashley, some of what Ellie had done, and Monday has a real estate CRM template. So I basically combined all of these things into one, and created this chaotic, huge board. It makes sense to me. Hopefully, it makes sense to Kate. And then I came across this girl, Courtney. She is in South Carolina, and she runs a company called Scale Up. Um, she is a superwoman. She has 4 kids under the age of, I think, 5. She teaches them homeschool, runs her husband's business, like the back end, and does this system automation. So I brought her in, we did Zooms, and it was like, this is how I want Monday to work and like integrate it. But I don't know. I'm tech savvy somewhat, but like not extremely. So she was like, what do you want to automate? What do you want to like still have your personal touch point on? And now Monday has everything from our email templates, my social media plan. It's all of our contacts. Kate and I use it every Monday when we meet to run through the status of people. My Monday is connected to my Google Calendar. So like when we schedule a due diligence date, it sends a calendar invite to our clients and to us. So it's like taking stuff off of our plate by having these systems in place, but not losing like the personal touch points. Um, when we have like a client move to a past client, so they've closed out their transaction, well, then it sends them through Flowdesk and it's like our post closing email chain. So just, it's a lot, but it started out and has just like slowly evolved as we've needed it to. And I think just like relying on people, or honestly, I mean, I bought the Hustle Humbly course. I bought the email templates. I paid Courtney. I pay for Monday. Like I had to figure out what would work for me. And doing all of that over the past 5 years has helped tremendously. But my brain is just chaos. I open more tabs than anything. So having that organized in some way has been extremely beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think listening to you say that, even me with my Monday that I'm quite proud of, I'm like, oh, that's a great thing that we could implement, right? And I think it's very easy for all of us to instantly be like, well, now I have a million things to do, and figuring out the perfect system is one of them. Sure, it can be, and over time it will be evolved to you. But I think the purpose of this conversation is just to say, like, find what system works for you right now, and don't be afraid to continue to evolve it as it progresses and as your needs change and as your business builds, right? Like if we're doing a few transactions right now, we don't need to have the perfect system. And as we work our business, then what we need out of a system will change and it will kind of present itself to us. So just kind of be open to that. One thing I want to touch on right as we're finishing up here is you mentioned the Hustle Humbly uh, podcast, but you also talked about downloading those emails. I'll be sure to include, we did a session with Katie as well, so I'll be sure to include that class recording. But you haven't mentioned this because I think you know I'm going to ask you about it, but boundaries. What one of her initial templates has boundaries in place. It's something that you've implemented in your buyer packets and seller packets. And you know, it's something that I look back on my production business as is something I never really set with people. And I think so many of us are like, oh my gosh, you feel like you've got kind of a normal client and everything's good and dandy. And then a few weeks down the road, they're texting you at like, you know,
3 in
2
the morning.
a.m. or something,
Yep.
you know, and you're like, I wish I had set boundaries in place because if I do, which I will still do it now, but if I do it now, it feels much more targeted, right? So will you talk about that? Because it's something that you implemented pretty quickly in your business. And as a relatively new agent, I'm just like so proud of you for, you know, I live vicariously through you in that way. Will you talk about that for a moment? And what does it say?
So my boundaries actually started before the Hustle Humbly stuff. That helped me like detail it out. But I think I said a little bit earlier, I'm pretty sure I called Brian crying one day and I was like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, okay. When I got to that point, I said Sunday was like my family day. So I started like that pretty much like 6 months in because I was coming off of this insane job that I didn't have like time off to where like I needed something in place. So I would tell clients up front, Sunday's my family day. And it kind of evolved to where, okay, if I'm not showing homes on Saturday, then maybe I'll show on Sunday. Like I need one day a weekend. That's going to be like my day not to work or something like that. And then when I started listening to Hustle Humbly, Katie kind of preaches pick a day or pick 2 days. If you can't have the weekend, then take like a Monday or Tuesday off. Like you can have time off. People understand like it is a real job. So then in her emails and email templates, she has like buyer rules. And now honestly, it's a part of our buyer consultation. I think we've changed it. It's not buyer rules because I felt like that was a little bit harsh. But it basically says like you can reach us via call, text, or email, but our hours of business are like Monday through Friday, I think Kate's are like 9 to 5 and mine's 8 to 4 or something like that. And then it's other appointments like fine. So we make sure people know, like, we'll show you a house after work, but you've got to schedule that with us. And we point out to them, we are real people. We have lives outside of this. That's why our team works the way that it works. We have families, we have things going on. I was at a wedding last weekend, so Kate was working. So like 9 times out of 10, we're not both going to be gone. That's why we're both infused in this working style, because I don't want to work 24/7. And honestly, I mean, I'm an open book. Therapy's been great for me. My phone goes into do not disturb at 7 p.m. every night, and it comes out of it at 8 a.m. If I need to see a client text message, then I will. If I'm negotiating a deal or writing an offer, I'll turn my phone off of do not disturb. But otherwise, it can wait. Like, the way we've approached it is, my dog is annoying. He's super needy. He's asleep on my lap right now. Is he dying? Like, does he need my attention right now? Is this client like dying? Is this deal falling apart? If it's not, it can wait. It can be a priority tomorrow morning, but like, I need peace.
And I think it's so hard for us to recognize that in the moment, especially when we're like trying to get a deal closed, right? Everything seems urgent, but truly after 5 p.m. on due diligence, like we're a few days before closing, nothing is urgent. Like it may feel that way, especially to the client, but it can wait, and no one is going to set boundaries for you. You have to set it for yourself. And I think it's also important for us to remember that like scarcity breeds exclusivity, right? Like it feels to us that we need to be available all the time, but actually saying like, yeah, I can do an appointment at this time or this time, if like, they will make it work, right? And so I think it's just important for us to remember. I know we're getting a little bit past, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But one thing that I've been thinking as you've been saying all of this is, especially kind of circling back to the very beginning, I'm thinking of Libby's class that she did was Surprise and Delight. And I just can't help but think about how your experience in the hospitality industry, like doing all of these events. One thing you didn't say, but you shared with me earlier, is like you would go to these places where you were bringing these C-suite people days in advance. You would go to all the places that they're going to be. You would set all of these things up, and then you would be with them that entire trip. And then after they leave, then you were breaking things down, right? Like you were doing the entire process. And so I think it's so important for us to remember that like we aren't really in sales, we're in hospitality and we're in service. And so the more we can kind of infuse those little special moments, then the more exciting it will be for our people. And truly, like that's what matters the most. So thank you so much for doing this today. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to throw out as we wrap it on up?
No, I think that's everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for doing this. If any of you guys have any very fast questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks for starting your day with us. It's always
Thanks,
exciting
Taylor.
to
Thanks,
hear how
Kate.
other people do their businesses. If you guys have any trainings that you want to see, please reach out. That's what we're here for. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye, y'all. Thanks,
Bye.
Taylor.
Thanks.